Well, I know everyone's excited for baseball season beginning and Major League Soccer as well, but the Bengals offseason still rolling along as now we bring in our Bengals beat writer, Richard Skinner. Skinny, the first couple weeks were about new guys. This last week was bringing back the old guys. They got Kevin Huber back, Samaje Perine back, Michael Thomas back, and now Jordan Evans all signing back with the Bengals.
Yeah, and I'm not so sure Josh Bynes maybe doesn't come back at some point too. I think that's where they were in free agency. I did a piece earlier in the week of kind of where they were financially. They probably weren't in Trey Turnerville. I don't even know if they wanted Trey Turner, for goodness sakes. I know they'd flirted with Ryan Kerrigan, and maybe there was some thought there. That didn't seem to work out. So they're at that stage of just kind of trying to repiece a lot of this together. I know that probably doesn't satisfy fans, but you got to fill your roster. And you look at it, I mean, Ricardo Allen got signed to help at safety because they're going to let Sean Williams walk. So now you got four safeties, Brandon Wilson and Ricardo Allen behind Jesse Bates and Von Bell. Jordan Evans isn't a major piece, but you got to have a special teams piece, and he played for about $900,000 last year. I'm going to guess it was somewhere along those lines. Kevin Huber surprised me a little bit. He played for $3 million last year. He signed for $1 million this year, so they are just kind of lining their ducks up. Again, you got to fill a roster. I mean, you can't play with 45. You got to fill it up with guys, and so I think they're kind of at that point of free agency of just kind of filling out the roster. I know that probably disappoints some fans, but it is what it is. I mean, they want to. I've talked about this later. They want to redo Jesse Bates. They want to redo Sam Hubbard possibly. That costs some money, and you're going to have to save a little bit along the way.
The big signing that they did have this week is quarterback Eli Apple, another defensive back we've seen added to this roster. Why is that such an emphasis on this team right now?
Well, I mean, he's not on this club anymore as a coach, but a friend of mine who was the defensive coordinator, Paul Gunther, used to tell me, can't get enough edge rushers, can't get enough corners. And I think that's the case. I think for Eli Apple, and that's the one contract that has not really been divulged on any of the websites over the cap or Spot Rack or even sources. I don't know where that contract is. I can't imagine it's very big. But he's a former first-round draft pick. And listen, you're not asking him to come in and be your second corner or your third corner or probably even your fourth corner. You're looking and going, I'm going to take a flyer on this guy. If there's something left in the tank, hey, we got ourselves still a talented guy who can still play. And so I think that's kind of where it is. I think this is more of a roll the dice. If he's got something in the tank, hey, we found something. If not, we're okay. We've already got enough depth at that position. But like I said, you can never. Look, last year, Trey Waynes got hurt. Mackenzie Alexander had an issue in training camp. You just can't have enough of those guys.
And especially when you're in a division with guys like Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry, Chase Claypool, Juju Smith-Schuster, now Sammy Watkins.
Right.
You need those defensive backs.
No question.
But speaking,
and we saw a couple times last year. They were down to the LaShawn Sims, Tony Brown portion of the program. You're not winning. If I remember right, that Pittsburgh game, they were dreadful. You can't get to that.
Absolutely not. The wide receiver aspect, though, of this is interesting because it's what everybody's talking about draft. You know, the tackle or the wide receivers. They wanted to go get more targets out there for Joe Burrow in free agency. It seems like that market has pretty much calmed down. Where do you think they're at? Are they going to add a playmaker?
In the draft. I don't think in free agency at all. I mean, they may add a body. I don't even know if they do that at this stage of the game. They brought Mike Thomas back. He's not a big part, but they brought him back. Auden Tate is still on the roster. I do think whether it's day one, and they're in an enviable position, they really and truly are, or day two, and there are some guys at the top of day two. Let's not forget, the two main guys on this roster, who are, and I'm going to call T. Higgins a 1,000-yard receiver because he would have gotten there if he hadn't gotten hurt in that last game. Two guys on this roster are 1,000-yard receivers the last few years, are a second-round pick and a second-round pick. Those guys are still pretty good in the second round. I'm not here to tell you don't draft one in the first round, but boy, they're in a good spot, especially with all the trades and the quarterbacks going off the board and somebody being desperate. You got a great chance to do something here coming up in the draft, either by taking the guy you want or trading back and looking the second round. They're in such an enviable position, it's ridiculous.
Before we move on to draft talk, because April is draft month, one more thing about free agency. Yep. With all the signings and getting Perine now under contract for an extension, Bengals have more money tied up in the running back position than any other team in the NFL. Do you think that stands at the season, and do you think that's smart?
I don't think it ends up being there. I hate to do this. I think Gio Bernard's either a trade or a cap casualty. I really do. I do think they have to free up some money to do some things as far as re-upping guys. I would be surprised if they do have that kind of money tied up. I just think Gio's just he's a 5-touch-a-game guy if Joe Mixon's healthy. Do you want to pay a guy $4.6 million? And again, he's a great guy. He's a captain. It wasn't me saying you're a captain or the coaches. That was teammates who selected him as a captain. So he's well thought of in that locker room. I just think he becomes a cap casualty.
All right, now the draft, everybody's favorite topic, at least the last couple of years. That was the big news in the NFL. 2 trades going down. The Bengals still at number 5. but cards shuffle a little bit more. Where do you think they stand right now that the dust has settled at least?
Yeah, and I wrote a piece on Saturday, and I think they're in a great spot because I think it's pretty clear that 3 quarterbacks are probably going to go off the board. Trevor Lawrence, I mean, you can write that in indelible ink and not even be worried about that.
Carve it into stone at this point.
Exactly. Probably Zach Wilson at number 2 to the Jets, probably. Then obviously San Francisco's trading up to draft a quarterback, even if they don't do anything with Jimmy G. Remember, Pat Mahomes got drafted when they still had Alex Smith in Kansas City for a year. So then at number 4 sits Atlanta. I doubt they draft a quarterback, but then comes possible trade up. At that stage, 4 quarterbacks will probably be off the board. It's a big step down to Mac Jones. It's a bigger step down from Mac Jones to the 6th quarterback. So at that point, does somebody who's quarterback needy go, hey, Bengals, we'll go ahead and make this deal because we need a quarterback desperately. And maybe they get lucky and there's still 2 quarterbacks on the board at the time they pick. And maybe multiple teams go, hey, Bengals, here we go. Do you want this, this, and this? And the Bengals say, all right, Carolina, we'll go back 3 spots, and we can still get our choice of maybe Penei Sewell, maybe one of the 3 wide receivers, probably not Kyle Pitts because I think Miami's in a spot at 6 where they take Kyle Pitts. But they are in a great spot. And you know what? If they don't do that, 4 quarterbacks are off the board and they don't like the trade or whatever's offered them, they get their choice of the best non-quarterback that they like on the board. Whether it's Penei Sewell, one of the wide receivers, Rashawn Slater. I mean, there's a lot of ways they can go. I think they're just in a perfect spot to either make a deal, and I hope if somebody offers them the world, they do it, or take the best non-quarterback on the board.
This is a front office that doesn't typically wheel and deal on draft day. What do you think it would take to get them to move out of 5?
I did a mock draft, so this is, and I did the Pro Football Focus simulator, and it does accept or deny drafts. So I did make a trade just to see what it looked like, and from Carolina, I got the following. I got their 1st round pick. We swapped spots. I got a 2nd round pick for them this year, and I got a 1st and 2nd round next year. That sounds about right, to be honest with you.
Pretty good for this franchise.
If a team is desperate for a quarterback, right, you hold them hostage. You go, listen, guys are off the board. There's 1 guy left. If you want him, I want this, this, and this. And if you don't, we're still okay because we'll still take the guy that we want because we don't need the quarterback. I think they have a chance to get a deep, not the world, not the 7 draft pick New Orleans Saints draft that Mike Ditka offered back in the day and Mike Brown turned down. And they drafted Achilles Smith, and we all regret that. But I do think they've got a chance to get a great haul out of this if somebody offers.
Top 3 positions you think they need to address in the draft?
Yeah, I think because they didn't address wide receiver because they still need one. They need a top taker. That position, I still think, offensive line is still up there depending on where they go with it. It doesn't have to be tackle or guard. It just needs to be somebody in there. And probably edge rusher. Wouldn't hurt for linebacker unless they're really sold on the kids they drafted last year. And we only saw them get their feet wet. We never saw them kind of step in and be stars. And like I said, if you're trading back and you get an extra 2nd round pick, by the time you've picked three guys out of the first 39, you can probably fill 3 major needs: offensive line, wide receiver, edge rusher, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, let's just take the best on the board at this point. So I think those are the 3 main for me.
Big news out of the NFL. We project at least this coming week would be the 17th game added to the schedule. Your thoughts on that? Because I've heard back and forth, if you add a 17th game, you need a second bye week. There are people for it and people against it.
I'm a big believer. If you're going to do 17, you need a second bye. I know for myself personally, covering the league, and it's a 6 or 7 day a week. We
need the bye weeks
right.
too.
It really is. It's exhausting. I mean, I get to a bye week, in the last few years, it's been right in the middle. It's almost been perfect, where it's midway point. You go, whoo, for a few days. And I can imagine what it's like for players. 17 games in this league, man. That's an awful lot. I do think they could use another bye week. I really do. I'm with you on that. I know you're taking off a preseason game, but heck, that's really a bye for a lot of these guys at the front end. They need to bye throughout. I mean, injuries, this league is just full of them throughout the season. Give them another bye week. I know they're not going to do it, but boy, they should.
All right, that's all for our Bengals talk. But before we let Skinny go, I do want to talk to you about the other big news in the city of Cincinnati, at least. John Brannon seemingly going through this. We're not sure. We think we know where it's going. We're not sure where it's really going with the investigations into allegations, whatever that means. Where is UC on all this? Because this offseason just keeps getting weirder and weirder.
Yeah, this is pretty simple to me. This is an AD that didn't hire John Brannon. Saw guys leave. Because, listen, this is John coaches hard. He coaches hard. I know that for a fact. And in today's day and age, that can alienate some players, especially when you're not winning at a big level. But as we sit here today, they have not found cause. From what I understand, they found that they practiced a little bit extra time. Okay, you're going to get a slap on the wrist
Right.
for that. Okay, and it is it's not allowed, but that's not a major violation. It's probably not for cause. I think for John, it's more. I think he wants to coach this team still, but I also think it's him saying, "Listen, there's a buyout for a reason." And that's why they're trying to find cause, so they can't afford what I thought was a $4.5 million buyout, and I found out it's a little over $5 million buyout. They can't afford it, so now they're trying to find cause so they don't have to pay that. And so, unfortunately, now for John, the following happens: either they find cause, which again I don't know if they do or don't. From what I know at this point, I don't think they do. I think John digs his heels in and says, I want my money, and I don't blame him for that, or I want to coach this team. But if you want to coach this team, then you've really been undercut by your athletic director, because now, however long this goes on, it's delayed recruiting. Even if you go out and recruit, it's going to be, this guy has another bad year, the buyout gets a little smaller, and we're going to negative recruit against you, and you're going to be gone anyway. Boy, they just put him in a bad spot. What should have happened for John Cunningham was this. Listen, it was a COVID year. Maybe you have to ask John to make a few changes personally and go, listen, ease up a little. I get it. You got to coach hard. I coach hard. I get it. But at some point, you have to just go, hey, listen, maybe you need to ease up just a hair. And maybe John eases up a hair. Maybe he doesn't, but maybe he does. And you say, listen, these guys leaving, we'll fix it. The transfer portal's a huge thing. Houston's starting 4 transfers, man. Arkansas is starting 4 transfers. You can get better quickly with all this stuff. And even in all this messed up year, he got you to the conference finals. Last year, he won you a conference championship in the regular season, or tied for it. Guy can coach. How about you rally around that instead of worrying about what it looks like for guys leaving? Guys are leaving across this country. And yes, there are reasons maybe these guys are leaving. It's because of John. Fine, let him go get more guys. It doesn't end well. Even if John comes back, it doesn't end well, Chris. I think for him, unless you can find cause, and again, I don't know if they do or don't. To this point, I don't know if they do. I'll dig my heels in and say, give me my money then if you want me gone. I want my money. I'm good with that.
What do you think happens?
I think that I think that he digs his heels in and they find a negotiated buyout of some kind. Or he comes back. I mean, this happened to Brian Wardle up in Green Bay. I was talking to somebody the other day and said it was amazing that Brian came back through all of that. But Green Bay is a one-bid league where you're not, negative recruiting is probably not going to happen a whole lot. Nobody cares if you do. I do think it's a possibility he comes back, but even if he does, I mean, it's just going to be so acrimonious. What's the point? Again, if I'm him, I'd go get your money, John, and then go find another place to coach, and I don't blame you if you do.
How damaging do you think this is for that program? Just when we thought that they were taking steps forward.
Yeah, and I think it's the panic button of all these guys going, listen, guys are going to the transfer portal now. Maybe it's not right, maybe it's not, but then you need to know how to negotiate the transfer portal. You need to figure out how to get guys from other programs. Like I said, you got 2 Elite 8 teams that are starting multiple transfers. Not because that coach, I mean, just the way of today's day and age, and especially if they now do this rule where you can have a one-time free, it's going to be the wild, wild west. You better, talk about NFL free agency, you better understand how to do college free agency at that point. Listen, the other part is John can recruit. I mean, he brought some guys in who can really play. Now, they didn't stay, okay, but you've had some guys still on the roster that have thrown their support behind him. I feel for him. I think John Cunningham, the AD, made a major mistake handling this.